anyone who's new to the channel, I just wanted to kind of let you know about what I'm up to on this channel. So 2 years ago or so, I decided I wanted to try building a log cabin in the woods in kind of the area of Canada that I grew up, which is Eastern Canada. So the first step of that is I bought a bandsaw mill, and then on the family property we've got, I started cutting down some trees and milling them into what would eventually become this Dovetail cabin. In order to go from that to where I'm at now, I've had to find an area on a piece of property that I like to build a cabin, create a road so that I could get supplies in here. I bought a small older farm tractor that would allow me to do a lot of the road construction and bring supplies down to the build site. I had to pick a design of a cabin that I liked, and that was something that I had to put a fair amount of thought into because there's all sorts of different types of cabins you can build. Clearing the site, I wanted to clear the site some, but not too much because I do like sort of the forest around, and then start building. And that's been kind of I started the first part of the build here, I think, in August of 2019, and then in June 2020, I was able to finish the roof. So that's sort of a short summary of what I'm up to on this channel. And there's a few side projects that I've done too, but the main thing I've been doing is building this, what I'm calling a Dovetail log cabin. And so welcome to this YouTube channel if you've never been on here before. Some of the challenges in this build, there's lots of kind of technical challenges or things that related to the build that were difficult. Building the roof was a big job. Getting supplies down here was a big job. Milling, learning how to cut trees relatively safely. Those were all challenges. If I answered the question maybe a bit more generally, I think one of the challenges is that there's just a lot of work to building a cabin. I had no idea how much work there was, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I just think it was important for me to remember that this is something that I am here to enjoy. And if it ever was feeling like it was too much work, to just sort of take some time, relax, go do something else, and make sure that I was always enjoying this, because that was the main goal, is to be out in the woods doing something I loved, and at the end of the day have a nice cabin that I'm proud of and I enjoyed the process of building. I often get asked why I picked this type of cabin, which I'm calling a dovetail log cabin, although I think technically it might be called a half dovetail. And really I've seen this type of cabin design in kind of Central and Eastern Europe, and I just like the look of it. It's not because it's a better, stronger, or superior design to any others. It's really just I like the look. I like the interlocking dovetails in the corners, and that was the reason I picked it. The other design that I like a lot, I don't know exactly what you call it, but with the semicircular sort of notches that logs sit on top of each other. That's another great design that maybe someday I'd like to try. I just picked this because I like the look. From a looks perspective, I like the gaps because there's sort of a contrast when it's all done. You'll have log, and then your chinky material, log, and chinky material, and I just like the look of that. I've done another video about the kind of other reasons beyond aesthetic reasons for doing gaps in the logs. But from a looks perspective, I just like the contrasting colors. I think my favorite part of building this cabin is almost the personal connections that it's brought out. It's been neat to see a cabin build and learn how to do all of the different skills of building a cabin. But one thing I've noticed, like the cabin's being built in a small rural community that I grew up in, but the interest from people in the community who've wanted to come down, or friends who've offered to come down and help along the way, or family members who have a lot more technical know-how about cabin building, who've come and offered their help and guidance and helped me along. Like I think that's the most rewarding thing. I think second to that is having, hopefully when it's all done, having built a nice cabin. The most rewarding thing is actually surprised me, but the people who have been interested in what I've been up to. Question of whether I'd change anything. I think one of the things I've learned doing this is, so the short answer is I don't think there's anything obvious for me that I'd change. I've definitely learned that there's a whole bunch of different ways to do what I've done and to accomplish the same goals. There's there's different ways to build the foundation for your cabin. There's different ways to overlap the logs. Some people say you should use completely dried logs. Some people say green logs are okay. I think, related to the question of whether I'd change anything is just, I think you just got to do it. And, there's maybe better ways to do it, but if you put some thought into it, I think you'll come up with something good. And a lot of people will say that they'd like to do this and don't know how, or, and I can tell you, like, I really didn't know how. My biggest resources were people who did know things and other YouTubers. And I think if you put that together and, organize yourself, that you could build something like this. Starting out on YouTube is kind of a neat experience. I'd say the first series of videos, you're just, anxious about what people are going to say, And when you're putting out something like I am, where I didn't really know what I was doing, you recognize you're setting yourself up to possibly be criticized, or at least I'm the type of person who would worry about that. So that was my anxiety about doing YouTube, but I wanted to do it for quite a few different reasons, but a lot of the reason was because I've just used YouTube so much as either inspiration or to develop technical skills, and I thought, well, I'll put out what I'm doing and see what happens, basically. But despite those anxieties I had talked about there, the overwhelming support from people who watch the channel and comment on the channel and stuff is really special, I suppose. So that's really nice to see, and it's neat to see, as the channel has grown a bit, people from literally all over the world watching what I'm doing in this small town in rural Eastern Canada. So that's neat, and you get comments from, countries that I've never been to and that sort of thing. So that's been a really neat part of the YouTube experience. And then occasionally I'll get something in the mail or a letter or an email of someone who said, that this channel or this design was what they wanted to do and that they've started doing a similar cabin build. So that's been really fun. So left to do with the cabin, there's all sorts of things. I think a lot of the big jobs are done, but I think the small jobs are probably going to take just as long, if not longer. I've got door holes to cut and frame, window holes to cut and frame. Some people will ask, why I didn't frame the doors and windows as I went. I think I could have done that. A lot of people do. I just didn't know exactly where I wanted to put them. So I'm going to cut those out. There's some trim pieces on the roof and the walls and gutters for the rainfall that I'm probably going to put on. The chinking is going to be a big job that I hope to start working on later this summer or fall. I'd like to kind of clean up the woods around here. There's some old like dead or dying fir trees that I'd like to clear out, and some small fir trees that I might thin out just to open up some space. Eventually I'd like to build an outhouse and a woodshed. And if I get that done, I think that would be the main goals related to this cabin that I'd like to get done. And then, then I have some other ideas for the future about maybe other builds or other things I might be able to build around here. But yeah, so I think the next project I'm going to work on, though, is getting the doors and windows framed. And then when I've done that, I'll know what remaining logs I'll have to put chinking on. And then that'll be another project that I'll like to get worked on soon. I mean, I'd like to have this cabin so that I can come in here and comfortably spend time like for this coming winter. So if that was the case, I think by the end of October, I'd like to have all of those things done. I think chinking I'd like to have done before it's starting to get cold at night. So maybe late August into September, I'd like to start and finish that. I think that's going to take a lot of time. I've never chinked a cabin before, and I think there's probably a bit of a tediousness to it of all the little gaps and the filler and the stuff that I'm going to do, but I'll show you on future videos when I get to that point. Yeah, so end of October might be my loose time frame, but again, I'm trying to have a plan and some goals, but not be too hard on how strict I am to adhering to those goals either. My plan when all this cabin is complete, I'm really not sure. I mean, I certainly want to be able to come here to spend some time, for weekends, maybe longer. So I think, that is something I will definitely do. I toy with the idea of whether or not I could spend a longer period of time here, maybe starting with a month. And I think I could do that. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and I think, I'll have to see, because I think one of the challenges of living, especially if we're alone, is just the psychological challenge after a period of time. I've gone on trips on my own for, into the woods for days or 4 or 5 days. But really, frankly, I've never gone for weeks or months. But it interests me, so I'd be curious to see how I would do in that scenario. And if I had someone interested in doing part of that with me, I think it would make it a lot easier. So we'll see. We'll see how things unfold and how the cabin goes and how life unfolds. But those are some of my thoughts as to what I'd like to do when it's all finished. I hope this video has been informative and kind of gives you an idea of what this channel is about, what motivated me to start it, kind of what I've done, and maybe the directions I'm hoping to go in the future. I appreciate people who are watching and subscribing to what we're up to, and if you do have questions or things you're wondering about or whatnot, just either comment or send us an email, and I'd appreciate that. So thanks for watching.